Hey all, this is Aesthetic, and welcome to Mark McMorris Infinite Air. With me on this video is Blank Tester.
Hey kids, how's it going?
And Turo.
Hey.
So this is kind of interesting. Mark McMorris Infinite Air, or Infinite Air with Mark McMorris, I'm just probably going to call it Infinite Air, was a game released in late 2016 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. By HB Studios, like I'd never heard of them, and this game is kind of interesting because it seems to be the first of the major sort of snowboard games that are physics-based. You know, this trend of having the controls really try and be like more realistic to the riding. You know, this was what, late 2016, and then since then there's been what, like the snowboard game, Snow Shredders, you know, that kind of thing. But it you know, even though this game was the first, it definitely didn't blow up. In fact, it's kind of, sorry, I'm not doing this very too well, but the game, you know, had a big focus on the multiplayer aspect of it, like as well. You know, like you can really customize and build your own very realistic lines and such on your own copies of the mountain and share those, and of course, the multiplayer scene died within a few years. The server's been shut down. Actually, this game isn't even available on Steam anymore. If you do get a copy and you try to boot it up, the game crashes when looking for the servers to sign in. You have to go into your firewall and tell this game to not, you know, be able to look online.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I've had this game since before the server shut down. And
so, without
the
multiplayer aspect, and without, you know, looking at the really advanced, you know, park editor and such, what do we have to actually show off in these videos is pretty much the circuit mode, which is, you know, gonna tell you how the game goes, but the rewards and such are really just the cosmetics part of it.
Okay.
You know, you'll be able to unlock the other pros and unlock all the cosmetics for your create a character. But otherwise, yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting because this really feels like I'm going to be showing off less than like 1/3 maybe of the intended design experience. Yeah.
But I mean, you're also preserving what you can.
Yes,
basically.
you are. Can I speak a little bit about that? Because, sorry, I know I'm cutting you off here, but I personally have played this game to 100% completion, as Connor will be doing in these videos, and it was a nightmare trying to figure out how some of these circuit challenges are supposed to be done, because all you are given is the little text box information, and it is not specific enough sometimes. And there is no information on how to do some of these challenges on the internet. This will be a godsend to like the 5 other people who have this game and haven't completed it yet.
So what the first video was the tutorials, which the first time you boot the game up, you have to go through the tutorials here. You know, they tell you all about everything, all the complex systems, because again,
mechanics,
yeah, they're trying to make they're trying to make the real physics-based, you know, tricking and riding system where you really use the thumbsticks to control every aspect of your stuff. I mean, snowboarding games up to this point were either really arcadey like the SSX series, or still had a good amount of arcade. Like, you could look at the Amped series, and even like Amped 1 and 2 were still fairly arcadey compared to how, you know, this does it. Again, so you went through all of those, and so I'll assume you know how those work. You know, you need to use the triggers and the thumbsticks to do either spinning or flipping or off-axis stuff or da-da-da.
Holy shit.
So then, like, going into the single player, yeah, it's this circuit mode where there are 6 tiers of challenges. All of those tiers have 4 challenges, and in all of those, the first 3 are going to be a combination of, like, a, you know, backcountry run, a big air event, a half-pipe event, etc. And then the last of those 4 is going to be a backcountry versus one of the featured professional riders. And, you know, like, making your way through it, it's, you know, fairly simple at the lowest end. You know, at the start, it wants you to just, like, do an event once before it'll unlock the next one. Or maybe, like, do one of the challenges to unlock the next one. But you will reach a point later on where the game wants you to have done a certain amount of challenges to get to the next tier. And so,
Okay.
you might hit one of those roadblocks sort of because, the challenges, especially at the start of the game, can be really contrasting in terms of how easy they are. Like, there might be ones that are just piss easy, like literally do a backflip. In this case, Wildcat Tame Dog, we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
Versus challenges that are actually pretty hard, even if you know what you're doing, just because of how complicated the game can be. In terms of, win the event, get a score of 80. Well, here it's 60, but it'll get up to like 80. But that can actually be pretty tough.
Yeah, those are some of the hardest challenges in the game. If you know what some of the verbiage of the other challenges are, then yeah.
Yeah, and
That,
so
I'm sure we'll also come to that later.
And so this playthrough will not actually do all the challenges. This is not going to be a 100%. Mainly because some of them, it was like, yeah, I figured them out like once, but when on camera and playing, I was like, I do not want to put forward the time to try to remember all this stuff.
So not a 100% playthrough.
Right.
Okay.
But I will be trying to do, enough to go through and show multiple runs.
So I gotta ask, so are all the levels like this short?
No. This is like a big air event.
Well, this particular one is really short. The last one was like a slightly longer area, but it still wasn't as long as most other games have for like a level, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I'd say that they vary quite wildly in length.
Okay.
I know the last mission is long, and as you get
it
in the
feels
game,
like it almost feels like, given what you said about like setting up your own lines and sharing them online, it almost feels like what they wanted people to do was make this sort of a sandbox where you just create your own, like it creates its own ecosystem of constantly generating challenges in a couple of different maps, and that these were just examples of things you could do.
Yeah, you can
definitely
go back to, footage of the game on release, like the developer footage of such, and you can see that there are, icons for player-created events all throughout the world, and, there's a lot of those, and it's exactly like you said, a kind of sandbox thing. And even in the menus, there's filters for how many of each kind of event you want to see. Which is funny because now there's zero.
Now there's nothing.
But yeah, so the game itself struggles. I'll say it struggles with being a game versus how realistic or simulation-y it wants things to be. Because, as, you start playing around with the off-axis stuff. Again, if you saw the tutorials, you can spin, you can... Oh, also, there is a trick list, but it's only available in circuit mode. If you're just free-riding, you can't see this. You have to go into circuit mode, go into
That's
a thing.
weird.
Yeah.
Strange, okay.
But, you saw that all the... you can start spinning and rotating in all different vertices and whatever. I'm not doing a very good job with this.
All axes, yeah.
All axes. But the thing about it is that it's very hard to stay consistent. Like you saw again, they get really in depth with your angle and how much you rotate is based on so many things. First, it's based on which inputs you choose to do. Are you going to do a up or down on the right stick plus a spin? Then it's based on how much have you wound those up. You saw that, preloading kind of works in that it linearly will give you more charge for a second,
but then
as you hold those, but then it
mellows out,
very quickly decays to a small amount. Then it's also based on, well, did you start holding both those at the same time, or did you maybe want more spinning and less flipping, so you kind of held one before the other. Then it's based on, do you do a tuck or grab in the air? Because, as you saw, the physics kind of work on, If you make your body smaller, you rotate faster. Then it's based on what grab did you pick, because I'm pretty sure like
it changes, your
that
axis of
actually
rotation.
changes things. All of that is so much. It's too much, and you will very, very often find yourself in a type of rotation where it is going to be like impossible to get a good landing, because we're probably going to talk about the multiplier system and landings like, I don't know, next video when there's more of those, but the game really wants you to have good landings. You see that there's, like clean, which is perfect, okay, sloppy, and the worst is a butt check when it's like you barely landed or such. And the game is going to punish you really hard for having bad landings. But again, if you try to do anything more over the top than just spin and rotate in one direction, you're probably going to get a bad landing.
That's really interesting. So it's I mean, I said this before we recorded, but I'll say this again. Just for my first impressions from just watching the tutorial, I would have put the game down immediately. Not because it's a bad game, but because nobody could do it, but I feel like the skill ceiling for a game can be as high as you want it to be, right? Like, you can make a game where the really skilled players can do things that look like magic to the rest of us. But if your skill floor is too high, and like it requires too much skill for me to even get into the game, I'm just gonna give up, right? Like, I'm not gonna practice and fail until I'm good enough to start playing the game.
Yeah.
It's the same thing the same problem I had with like Persona 4 Ultimax whatever Arena, that fighting game. I was trying to do the tutorial, I just couldn't do the inputs fast enough, and then I gave up in the tutorial because I was like, fuck this. I'm not even gonna try. Like, somebody else can do that. I'm sure they have lots of fun with it, but it's not for me.
Yeah, so like a couple things. That kind of ends up having it be like, and again, I'm talking from someone who does not want to put 1 million hours into this game to, know everything. That kind of ends up having it be to where and there are these weird ragdolls when you bail.
Jeez.
Every single ramp or jump or whatever is going to be slightly different in how much air does it give you, what can you do during then, and so you almost have to file each one away separately with kind of knowing when
that
to start
particular jump.
Something like go back to a game like SSX or even Amped. I can come up to a jump and see that it's like, okay, it looks like he'll give me a medium amount of air versus, okay, it looks like he'll give me a huge amount of air, and so in my mind that'll let me know what I can try and go for, but that's not at all making me be precise enough to know that, like, okay, if I start pre-winding 0.6 seconds before taking off, I can either get 2 flips if I don't tuck and do a grab or whatever, or I can maybe get 3 if I tuck at this time and do these specific things. It's too much, again. And like,
that is a lot to think about,
and like, even going back again to like the Amped games, Amped 2, if you do an off-axis thing, there's a lot of different rotations you can do. It's not just like, oh, spin only, flip only, or be at like a 45-degree angle. There's a bunch of variants in there. But if you stay consistent in the angle that you're holding while you're flipping, you will always come back around to a very landable state. Here again, sometimes I've known as soon as I've taken off that I've fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, because like, I can see how, like, if you were actually snowboarding and you tuck in and you speed up in your spin, and now you're spinning at kind of a weird speed you're not going to necessarily land if you continue doing what you're doing, you can kind of use your inertial, like, reference with your biological systems. Your body can feel how your inertia is changing and what you might need to do. But like, if you're now having to simulate that, but not giving us access to that kind of information. Instead, we just have to go on what's going on screen, and then think, what trick can I do that will speed up my spin so that I can land the right... That is so much to take in. I would love to see... This seems like the kind of thing that a computer would be really, really good at, and if there are humans who are good at it, I'd really love to see them playing.
Yeah, I've had that thought a few times, that, like, an actual professional snowboarder, when doing one of those complex, triple cork, 1440 kind of things, might have an easier time knowing how to align their body to land than you would in this game.
Than you would do playing the video game. Because you just don't have the same, you just don't have the same kind of information to play the game.
Yeah, and so ultimately, like, this game was probably hoping to be kind of like how the Skate series was to skateboarding games, where before it was really arcadey, and now it introduces, a more physics-based kind of intuitive thing. But while the Skate games, even Skate 1, was, a very incredible package with, still tons of, helping the player out but letting them feel like they did something really cool. Yeah. Here there's...
Whoa.
Yeah, not a lot of the player... So, alright.
What are we seeing here?
Let's look at kind of the free ride aspect, where, this Mount Infinite is a giant kind of mountain range. It doesn't go on forever, there are boundaries, but it gives you a lot of room. Here I'm hitting one of the overall boundaries. And we're looking at two kind of ways to move around. Think of it kind of like as a very high level movement, and then a more kind of
fine grain
mine grain, whatever you said, where the more detailed one is this helicopter, this Red Bull helicopter, and then the much higher level is just, you fly up to like the skybox, and you can move around to whatever. But in the free roam, you can move to wherever you want and start your runs from that.
So can you start in like unclear areas, like just right in the middle of a forest?
Yeah,
yeah, you can.
Huh.
And again, like, I do want to point out, even though I might not really show it off, the actual, like, create your own area, create your own park or so is really in-depth. Like, more in-depth than, like, really any other game. You can, modify the snow itself, like, what you're riding on to be at a certain angle, or, modify that under you. Because think about it, when you're on a mountain with lots of snow, you're not riding on the actual ground. You're riding on several, like, feet of snow where you can shovel and scoop that out, and so not only just, like, put down a ramp where you want, but make something be, like, a linear slope if you want, or, make something contour in a certain way if you want. And so, like, they go into that kind of detail in the park editor, and... Yeah, again, you could just, like, look up older footage. It's weird to say older footage of a 7-year-old game, but, older footage of people who have made their own thing and kind of see what you could do there.
That makes me kind of sad, because it feels like they've got two good ideas for video games, and they've mushed them together where they are fundamentally opposed. One of them is they want to make this really very, very granular physics-based snowboarding game that would require a high degree of skill, but if you can do it, you'll feel really cool. There'll probably be a real rush playing a game like that.
Yeah.
And then they've also got this thing, they want to make it an open multiplayer experience where everyone can share their levels. Well, not everyone is capable of playing a game or even learning a game at a high enough skill level that, like, you'd have to have, like, a friend group who is all really, really good at this kind of stuff.
I actually just wanted to really quickly point this out, but you may have seen in the top left corner that thing that says, like, record unavailable with, like, a red circle next to it. Yeah, the replay record function is bound to circle/B on an Xbox controller.
So they definitely want you to be sharing this shit.
It's bound to a face button.
Yeah.
Like, they want you to do something cool and upload it for people to see.
And that's a really cool idea, but, like, wouldn't that have been better in a more casual experience that anybody could pick up and play? Right? Like, these are the kinds of multiplayer sharing features that work really well in a game with really, really simple controls, and then you can add stuff on. Like, I mean, think about, like, Roblox, right? Like, Roblox is built around, there's, like, some really basic standard controls, and then you can add stuff on as you build your own game around it, right? You make your own fun. This is really,
Yeah.
really complicated from the jump.
And so maybe it's telling that, this game failed to really keep a big audience and died out within a few years, whereas Steep, which was released at almost the same time by Ubisoft, so also by a much bigger studio, which was also a more arcadey, simpler, lasted a lot longer and got Riders Republic as basically a sequel that does the same thing, but with a much grander scope. So yeah, again, I'll be going through the various circuit modes, so we'll see those. So we'll move on to, circuit mode tier 2 next time. So see you then.